before we jump back into the baseball conversation, like I said, it is National Radio Day, and a lot of you don't know who I am. Like, obviously, you've seen me with Boomer and Gio, after I joined the digital team, and, like, maybe you've seen a little bit of me with Evan and Tiki or BT and Sal, but this is now my 13th, 14th year in radio, and I've been very blessed to have this opportunity and be here, and it's because of a lot of people. Like I said, Eddie hired me and has been awesome. I always an ear to listen to, and I've been lucky to work with, everyone I grew up idolizing, really. I got to work with Steve, and Steve was my favorite radio host of all time, as crazy as that sounds, as a younger guy. I, adored Steve, and I got to work with Tony, who was the man, and I was, work with Craig and Evan and Tiki and Joe. And I got to work on the morning show, which if it's not for those guys, I'm not in this position. I got to work with Mike. I was on the, infamous Mike's On app. And I've been, in this industry grinding for years, Westchester Knicks. Like I said, I worked on the Taz show. But yeah, I'm not in this position if it's not for, one, Mike, because, he took care of me after the app was done and made sure I came back here. And then, Boomer and Gio really introduced me to you guys, and that's how I ended up here. And, Gio, vouched for me when Spike took over and, Hurley. And I'm not in this position, Boomer, Gio, but specifically really Gio. I'm not in this spot without them. So I've been very blessed. Eddie, Gio, Mike. So it's been a fun journey. I grew crazy as it is. I know my voice sounds the way it does, but I am not as old as my voice sounds, being only 33. But I've idolized this station since I was a kid. My high school yearbook, I've achieved half of what it said was I working at the Fan and married to Beyonce. So, I hope my girlfriend isn't listening, so she won't love that. But, half the dream. Jay-Z, watch out, buddy. But, I've gotten to work with a lot of great people, and I've learned a lot, and I get to talk to you guys and do this, which is awesome. And it's a cheesy holiday, but it's one of those ones that I get to reflect. And, not for a lack of hard work. Because I've busted my ass to get here, and I continue to bust my ass, with the digital team. But this station is a part of my life, huge life. Before here, getting here, and now I've developed a family. Being around these guys and being, have my hands in everything is awesome. So you never take it for granted. So, without the morning show guys, without Mike, Taz, where we've done funny things, over there, everything, I'm not in this position. So it's always fun every night. I get excited to be here. I get jacked up. The lack of sleep doesn't matter being in this spot. So it's very cool. And I love talking to you guys. Even the people who can't stand me, I love talking to them too. So I never really get to do that. So I wanted to show some love. Obviously Ryan and Spike, play a huge part too in my thing. But, if it's not for Gio, if it's not for Mike, I'm not in this position. I'm probably, laying cement or, plumbing, doing something like that. The hard jobs, the jobs that are, a hard day work. This is not hard. This is fun. The grind was the grind, but so is everything else. So I'm very blessed. And, it is National Radio Day. So I want to share a little bit about that. But enough about me.